one of the things that, again, we should be aware of is this idea that even though we have problems and conflicts with multiple nations, we still don't actually want to push them into each other's arms. Again, the Soviet Union and China during the Cold War being the key example. I mean, this principle of geopolitics goes back thousands of years to the Romans, right? Divide et impera, divide and rule. You do not want to unite your enemies. And what we've done here is we keep pushing them together. You know, China and Russia historically have not been friends. They share long borders together. Neighbors generally have problems with each other. These are nations with serious conflicts or differences of interest. And we've made it really easy for China to turn Russia into the junior partner in that relationship.
Chamath, do you think U.S. foreign policy needs to change and that we're setting up this, axis of conflict, this axis of allies that we don't want to have be allies? And, would you kind of advise? And also, do you get concerned about this oil yuan trade where there may be some, economic tie-ups that really could affect, the dollar as a reserve currency?
Look, a couple things. I think it's really dramatic to kind of paint it in these stark kind of like bipolar terms. I think we are post all of that. So I understand how in the Cold War, it was easy to fall into binary definitions of good and evil, 1 and 0, us versus them, team A versus team B. But in 2022, I don't think that's how things work anymore. We're in a highly interconnected, highly global world. It's very complicated. Dollar flows are real time. They're massive. Cooperation is real time. It's all over the world. It's with every country. So it allows every country actually the first chance that they've ever really had to maximize their own potential for their own citizens. And that's really what every country's goal is, right? Mm-hmm. And so in that lens, look what just happened today. Gazprom said they're going to shut off Nord Stream 1 just for, a few days, right? But as a result of that, EU nat gas has just gone absolutely nuclear and just closed at all-time highs.
14x where it was pandemic.
Right.
Price per unit for year ahead.
So if you take a step back, we are at max energy production with all of the capacity all around the world, 100 plus odd million barrels a day. Okay, global productivity absorbs that. There is very little room right now to expand that without pushing the date in which that capacity is available out until 2028 to 2030. So effectively a decade from now. So if you're in this situation and you're a country with vast natural resources, of which I'll just remind us America is one, I think the most important thing you can do for your own citizens is to monetize these petrochemicals now. Get it out of the ground in a reasonable way. Sell them in the marketplace because there's demand for it. Take that money and reinvest it in your people. And I think if you look at it that way, the best run countries are responding to this moment in time like any company would. How do you maximize demand and sell the product you have to the most number of customers globally? And so I think the Middle East is doing an incredible job. The US, by the way, by passing the IRA, finally, I think, is on the right footing because we can talk about this in a moment, but the path to permitting and the path to cleanup, and by the way, it puts fossil fuels on a level playing field with clean energy alternatives.
Emerging alternatives, yeah.
The best thing that could have happened, okay? So I think we're all behaving in a very rational, market-focused way. And so I would focus less on trying to dramatically kind of resolve these things as a few countries versus everybody else. I don't think that's what's happening.
Yeah, now, much more complex.
Much more complicated than that. But I think the simple explanation is people with resources in the ground of the country in which they rule have a responsibility, if they believe that there's market demand, to absorb that so that they can take the revenue that comes from it and reinvest it in their people. That is true for the United States. It's true for Saudi Arabia. It's true for every country in the world.
Yeah, Saudi Arabia is clearly making these investments, right? Not just on
and by the way,
energy, but also housing and new industry and education.
And then what do you do with that much money?
Saudi Arabia is becoming much more liberal as a result too, right? The education standards, yeah.
And if you look at the investment, you didn't need to go to Dave Swenson and understand portfolio allocation, although I think the guys in Saudi are smart enough to have probably done it. But if you have a lot of money coming from one kind of business, and you need to make sure that you can diversify so that you can reinvest over a long period of time. If you look at countries that had huge petrochemical related revenue flows, the Nordics, what did they do? They stood up these huge sovereign wealth funds, and those sovereign wealth funds went abroad and they bought all kinds of non-correlated assets to those petrochemicals.